You know, 1994, we all went back to the Atlantic States again, which was 6 weeks before or 6 or 7 weeks before the Olympia, because we wanted to see Dorian Yates come back, you know, and see him again. And we got an announcement that was made, you know, that you had torn your bicep, and I think you actually showed off the arm on.
I think I was saying at that point I tore something in my forearm because I didn't want to like bring too much attention to it, but yeah, it was.
Right.
It was the bicep.
It was all black and blue. I remember seeing it. What happened? And you know, most guys would have dropped out of the Olympia at that point. How did you come to grips with the fact that, hey, I'm going to do this Olympia and I'm going to win it even though I'm injured?
Well, imagine this kid from England, from Birmingham, who had nothing, who had no support or anything, had got himself to that point where I'd won the Olympia 2 times. Not only that, I set a total new standard for the sport. And now I'm contemplating, like, I'm finished. Mm-hmm. This is it, man. I'm finished. Like, this just, I don't know what the fuck's going to happen now, but I'm like, that's it. I'm finished, right? Now I can analyze exactly how the injury happened. And you know, Big Steve. Big Steve told me in '93, like, man, you got to stop with this fucking heavy fucking training all the time. This crazy training, man. You got, like, you just need to pull back and cruise now because you got the physique that you keep that physique. No one's going to beat you in the next fucking 10 years, man. So make your money, man. Do, you know, good advice from Steve, probably. But it wasn't about the money for me. You know, it was about how far can we push this? So I want to push it some more and see where this goes. But I got a slight shoulder injury, and this affected the positioning of my shoulder. Right. And I looking back, I remember I used to do these reverse grip rows, and my right hand, boom, just went straight on the bar, and the left hand was starting to be difficult to get. It's like I had to like kind of twist it to get it on there. Mm-hmm. So that means the bicep was in like a position of too much tension because the shoulder was inwardly rotated. And because I was a crazy bastard, just trying to do exactly the same weights that I did in the off season right into the contest, because I'm thinking, if I can use the same weights, then, you know, I'm not going to lose. If I start going down and using lighter weights and all this stuff, maybe I'm going to lose size. Of course, I probably wouldn't, because it's just a matter of maintenance. So lesson learned. But that, you know, that was the mentality, and like nobody could tell me what to do, right? Because who's going to tell me what to do? Who's been there before? Who's done this shit? Nobody, right?
Right.
You know, I was rowing with 440 6 weeks out from the Mr. Olympia, which was unnecessary. And bam, you know, I mean, anyone that's ever had a major tear, I mean, you know about it, right? This is not some little fucking thing. This is in this shocking pain for a few seconds and then like pretty much nothing because your body goes into shock. But I knew that I tore the bicep or detached the tendon or something. I knew it was serious. Mm-hmm. And so there was a few days where I was feeling like this, like, fuck, it's all over then. Like, you know what I'm going to do now? And then, you know, the more positive side of me kicked in and started, like, having a debate and saying, well, listen, if you give up now, right, that's it, you're out. That's 100%, right? That's 100%. Well, how about if you just do what you can do, continue with your diet, because that's it, man. You know, if you just blow your diet for a few days, it's like, I probably would have been finished, right? So, because you just lost that mindset. So I had a couple of days where I was wobbling. Then I said, nah, listen, if you give up, and that you're out. So how about you just see what you can do and work around the injury, keep the diet, do the cardio, and apart from the obvious bicep injury, I managed pretty well, and I was in good shape. And then I don't know what happened the night before the contest. I got some kind of stomach bug or bloating, which actually carried on for about 5 to 6 days after the Olympia. I had diarrhea and vomiting and all. I really don't know what it was, but my body started holding water like the morning of the contest, and the prejudging, I looked very watery compared to the night before. I managed to, like, you know, after all the posing and sweating, I think the night show looked a lot better, but It definitely wasn't Dorian Yates at his best for the reason of the injury and all the stress that brings, and then whatever it was, food poisoning or something that happened in addition to that the night before.
But it must have felt good. I mean, that when you came out on top, I'm sure that was a big sigh of relief, because you said, hey, if I can win not at my best, you know, that's a powerful something, you know.
Well, you know, perhaps fortunately for me that Flexerila was not there that year because he had a car accident.
Right.
So he was out. So, you know, nearest competitor was Sean, who's a great bodybuilder, and he was in great shape, tight shape and everything. But, you know, to beat somebody who's 50 pounds heavier than you, that's a tough, you know. So even Dorian, if he's 10 or 15% off, is beating 100% Sean Ray.
Yeah, so that, I mean, that, like I said, I've had to feel like vindication for you. Now, you know, how come you, my question always has been, I always wanted to ask you is, how come you never got the bicep repaired after that?
Because it wasn't a detachment. If the tendon detached from the, you know, where it's attached down on the forearm there, it's quite easy, just like a pec tear. You take the tendon, you pull it back to the point, and you reattach it. But the tendon didn't detach at all. The tendon was fine. What happened is the muscle belly tore, and it just slid up the tendon. So there's nothing to reattach. It's moved, and there's nothing I can do about that. So a lot of people ask me that, like, if there was a surgical answer to that problem, I would have done it, but there wasn't. So
of course, everyone always took shots at that bicep. All your competitors, Nasser and all the guys, were always like, oh, Dorian has got a torn bicep, you know, that he shouldn't win the Olympia, which is ridiculous, because the funny thing was, you never even saw it, really. And when you posed, I don't know how you hit it.
Here's the thing, Dave. I mean, like, Dorian doesn't deserve to win because of the torn bicep. How can Dorian get a perfect score with an imperfect physique? Well, it just really shows that people saying that, they don't know how the contest is judged.
Right.
It's judged on 11 compulsory poses, 4 poses in the semi-relaxed position and 7 muscular poses, and then also back in the posing round, although really the posing round was more or less like if you had 2 guys that were real close, you could use that to separate them. Right. Really, that was the case, you know. So there's only one pose that torn biceps would affect, and that was front double bicep. So I accept that, and I just say, all right then. So I lost the front double bicep to everyone in the contest. Everyone. I don't care. Everyone beats me in that pose. But there's still 10 other poses.
Right.
And it's just mathematics. Who wins the majority of the 10 poses wins the contest. And here's the thing about the Dorian Yates physique. There's certain poses, even if I'm off, it's pretty impossible to beat me on because of my structure.
Right.
So we look at the first of all, the relaxed poses. Front relaxed pose, not my best. People can beat me in that pose. Nasser was better than me in that pose. Haney was better than me in that pose. Few people. All right. Turn to the side. Nobody could beat me. Because, first of all, I got quite a short torso, which looks more aesthetic with the long legs. And then I had thickness and density, which just made people look like a little kid standing next to a man. I mean, you know, like people look flat and they don't have the thickness. So from the side, you get beaten. From the back, I don't think I even need to make a comment, right? Let's move on. Let's move on to the compulsory poses. I lose double bicep to everybody. Side chest can be beaten by some people. Nasser was probably better in the side chest in 97. Some people might beat me in the side chest pose. It wasn't my best pose, but it was a great pose still with the calves and everything. But I could be beaten, but only by a few people. Front lat spread, nobody can beat me.
No.
Back double biceps, nobody can really beat me.
No.
At least the competitors I was competing against. Ronnie's, maybe you can debate, but he was not at his best then. Back lat spread, good night. Okay, let's not debate that. Side tricep, again, not the best triceps on the stage. I'm not saying that, but you don't judge the triceps only in the side tricep. You judge from head to toe. So from head to toe, I don't think I could be beaten that pose, especially the way I did it with the one leg back, showing the hamstrings and the calves, which nobody could match. Then abs and thighs, for a big guy. I had a good abs and thighs, and maybe some people could beat me on it or match me on it. But I look very good in the abs and thighs next to everybody because I had these huge lats, which give you that width in that as well. So I believe the two, let's say, controversial Mr. Olympias, if you look at the mathematics of that, I beat Sean quite easily in 94, and 97 would be close, but I think the majority of the poses would go to myself against Nasser. It's not like, well, Nasser looked 20 times better doing the front double bicep, so you just get a first or a second in each pose. Right. So it doesn't matter that if he slaughtered me in the front double biceps and I just beat him in the front lat spread, it doesn't matter. One of you wins, one of you doesn't. That's it. So I think in the majority of the poses, that would have gone to me as well. So
what happened, Dorian, in 1997 to you? Because once again, we've heard reports, and I've read the Flex magazine stories and everything like that. What actually happened that caused you to lose all that blood and to wind up with all the transfusions you wound up getting?
It was a couple of things that happened. First of all, I had a very severe tricep tendonitis all year round, and I really need to take time off, right? Time off, therapy, get the inflammation down. But with my mentality, with my mindset, and also, this is Mr. Olympia, you got people chasing your ass, right?
Yeah.
I didn't feel that I could afford to do that, which probably would have been now, in retrospect, the wiser thing to do, but I didn't. So I had this severe inflammation. After every workout, I was taking anti-inflammatories. I was using ice and everything just to try and get this inflammation down. Then I went to see a specialist, and he suggested that I take a cortisone shot in the elbow, which would take the inflammation down, get me through to the contest, and then afterwards we'd address it. Maybe I needed slight surgery to remove the scar tissue or whatever, but that was his thing. Well, this guy, we had no strength athletes in England or anyone that treated them or knew how to treat them. So this guy, his specialist was soccer players, right? He deal with knees and ankles from soccer players. He was not used to dealing with a powerlifter or, a bodybuilder. So he advised me to ease back on the training a little bit. So what does that mean to me and him is probably two different things, right? So I didn't ease back that much. And of course the cortisone takes away the pain, but it further weakens the tissue, which is already weak. That's why it's inflamed. It's damaged, right? That's your body telling it's damaged. So I had the cortisone. First of all, I had the stomach bleed, which got me hospitalized, and I had a blood transfusion. And of course, they ask you all the things you're taking, so growth hormone and steroids and anti-estrogens, and I'm taking a couple of anti-inflammatories for my shoulder and elbow. So he said, all right, I'll come back to you tomorrow and I'll see what I think about all this stuff. So, we're taking the steroids and the growth hormone, all this stuff that we're hearing things about. He didn't even mention that. He's like, this particular anti-inflammatory that you're taking, how long have you been taking that?
Oh my God, that was what it
was? I said, well, I got it from my doctor and I ran out and I got back in pain. So he gave me like a repeat. I didn't even go see him. I just go to the pharmacy and they just keep giving it me, right? So I've been using it for about 2 years. He said, well, look, read this. This is the most irritant and toxic to the lining of your stomach and should never be taken more than a 6-week period.
Wow.
Well, my doctor had been giving it for 2 years, and if I was in the States, I guess I'd be suing him, but we don't have that culture in UK, and I was not interested in trying to sue anybody or blame anybody. I just want to get to the contest. So that was the one thing. Then, I had the cortisone in the elbow, and 3 weeks out from the contest, I was doing some triceps. Wasn't even really heavy, and bam, that whole tendon just went. And now the biceps tear was 6 weeks out from 94. Now this is 3 weeks out, and this is more serious. I went home, and I tried to extend my elbow like this, and it wouldn't move.
Oh my God!
So I'm like, it's got no attachment because it can't move. After a few days, I could move it a little bit, and apparently it's 90% or 95% of the tendon had totally detached. There was a little thread holding it on. Wow. So again, it's well, you know, we've been here before in '94, right? I pulled through then, so 3 weeks out from the contest, and literally the last 3 weeks I could not train. I couldn't do any weight training. It was out. Even posing, which I was quite regimented with, doing an hour a day of posing, I couldn't really do that because I was scared, like tensing too much might even pop it. So all I was doing was cardio and sticking with my diet and getting a lot of therapy on this arm to try to get the bruising down and the swelling and everything so it wouldn't be too apparent. So, you know, now I've got a bicep injury and a tricep on the same arm. So now it's even affecting it worse, especially in that front double bicep.
Amazing that you made it through that contest. Wow. I mean, I don't think many people would have gone through with it. Were you worried that if you lost, that you would, that you could have just maybe pulled out and got it repaired and come back the following year? I mean, what was you?
Yeah, there's always that option that went through my mind, but I'm 3 weeks out. I've done all the work. I'm in shape. And if I don't go now, it's like you lose that momentum. If somebody else is champion now you got to come back and try and dethrone him. Is the champion now. Whereas in that case, I was the champion. And as history showed, in any case, I was not able to come back the next year because even I had the surgery in New York off a doctor that worked with the New York Jets because he was used to dealing with with football players and big guys that might have a tricep detachment. So I had it done in New York, but go through the rehab and all that kind of stuff and get back into training. When I got back into training, it was apparent now that the bicep injury didn't really affect me that much training. It didn't knock down my poundages on back or anything. It was maybe like 1 or 2 reps short if I did dumbbell curls is a little bit, but didn't affect me that much, where this was really, really affected me. Like I couldn't, if I tried to bench, it would be totally crooked and I had lost power in the tricep and there's no way I could have competed again. So I'm kind of glad I did see it through in '97, that last one.
Yeah. Did you ever have thoughts about making a comeback, or after you saw Ronnie in '98, were you like, I'm done?
No, I mean, I made a decision to retire based on factors, which, I couldn't train properly. You can't compete against the best of the world if you can't train properly. And my passion was always to try to improve. Whether I did or not, you can debate that. But I always wanted to try. And now I knew that's not possible. So it's like, what's the point now? I go in a contest and get beat by half a dozen guys who couldn't carry my gym bag before, but now they beat me because I'm like a wounded lion and they can get me. So, no, I never thought about it. I made that decision, and that was a lock. There was no way coming back from that.
Do you think if you hadn't gotten injured and you came back in '98 and Ronnie looked like he did in '98, how do you think that would have turned out, that competition? Would you have beaten him?
Well, I'm going to say yes. And Ronnie's going to think he could beat me. And there's no way he's going to say that Dorian could beat him. There's no way I'm going to say he could beat me. I'm just not going to accept that. But Ronnie's the only bodybuilder that I've looked at and said, what the fuck?
That's impressive.
What the fuck, yeah? He's the only guy I've ever looked at and said that. Because that's how impressive he was with the mass, and while he was able to maintain that conditioning. At some point he lost it and didn't have that. It was getting too heavy. But when he was on, man, that guy was the only guy that really impressed me. So all I can say is, when it was my time to go on the stage, I handled the business and I beat everyone that was there, which is including Ronnie. And he got a lot better after that. So we'll never know, right?
Yeah. Would you think Dorian Yates in '93 would have beaten Phil Heath at his best today?
Absolutely, no doubt.
I agree.
No hesitation. Absolutely. So would Flex Wheeler. So would Kevin LeBron.
You agree? Okay. You think the top 5 at the Olympia would have beaten him in '90s?
Top 3 or 4.
What about like a Chris Cormier?
He'd probably beat Sean just because he's bigger.
Right.
But I don't think he could beat Flex at his best. I don't think he'd beat Kevin at his best.
Let's move to anabolic steroid use, because a lot of people I know, probably myself included at one point, thought that Dorian had the magic secret potion, and I found out very rapidly.
A whole team of people over in England and Birmingham at the gym there. I mean, that's, you know, I had a whole team of doctors because that's the, you know, the most important thing. Like, let's see how big we can get a bodybuilder. You know, I'm being flippant. It's just, I got my knowledge from the fucking underground steroid book.
We all did.
Just like everybody else, yeah. And the other guys that were around, and the guys that sold stuff, and the guys that had been to America and observed what people were using there, and my use up until like being at the Olympia was very, very conservative. I remember meeting Dan Duchesne. I went to meet Dan Duchesne when I was out in California after I got second to Haney. And he's like, what are you taking? I'm like, off season, 500 milligrams of Sustanon, 400 milligrams of Deca, and 10 5 mg Dynabol a day. That's my max. That's my max, yeah? He's like, what the fuck? He's like, this is no good. You got to take more than this. And I don't listen to everything he said because the guy was a bit crazy. But like, I just want to be on a level playing field, man. Like, what's everyone else doing? And it's like, right, first of all, raise your testosterone to 1,000 milligrams a week, right. And, you know, raise this up a bit and raise it up a bit. So, and that's when I started using growth hormone because I had access to it and, you know, had the income coming in. Although it's funny when I hear American bodybuilders talking about how much. I'm going to put some lights on, Dave.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're starting to look like the Shadow, for real.
I'm the Shadow, man.
You know, it's funny because, you know, while you're getting your light on, I'll just say, you know, a lot of people think that Dorian was using like 100 IUs of GH a day. And, you know, I've heard all these crazy cockamamie things. What was the most growth hormone you ever used?
8 units a day, Dave. 8. Okay. That's it, yeah? 8.
That was significant back in the 90s.
One time in the off season, instead of using 8 a day, I used 16 3 times a week. Mm-hmm. And looking back on all my records and all my logs, that was the best progress I ever made. But it was just 3 times a week. I just wanted to try, like, let me try a bigger dose, but leaving it further apart and see what happens. And for me, that was probably the best response I get. But I only ever, like, kind of experimented a little bit in the off season.
Right. From
the Mr. Olympia 92 all the way to 97, that last 12-week period, I always use the same thing. Always use the same thing because I didn't want to mess with the winning formula.
What was the formula?
The formula was don't use any androgens that aromatize to estrogen and hold water the last 12 weeks. So I only used Trenbolone, which was Parabolone in the day, Primobolan, Anavar, very small amount of propionate just to keep a base level of testosterone.
Right.
And for fat loss, GH and clenbuterol, and that was my stack. I mean, last couple of weeks did some, you know, different things. Like last 3 or 4 weeks, take a little bit of palotestin,
right?
Switch the testosterone to Masteron. Mm-hmm. That's why I looked like in contest shape 8 weeks out because I was not taking the Anadrol or testosterone or anything. I did in the off season. I tried it in the off season, but getting ready for a contest, it was all non-aromatizing, non-water holding type products.
But you know, Dorian, 8 IUs of GH back in the 90s was a lot because guys didn't have, you know, it was expensive. Guys didn't have access to it. So that was pretty progressive, I think, during those years. People don't realize that no one did that much growth hormone back then. Guys would use like 2 or 3 or 4 IUs.
Right. People were starting like early 90s, 4 IUs a day or whatever. But I always find it pretty amusing when I hear American bodybuilders talking about how much money they used to spend on growth hormone and steroids. Because back in England, it practically cost me nothing.
Oh, wow.
You know, like the steroids anyway were a couple of bucks a shot, but mostly I knew the guys that were doing it, so they'd just give it me. And growth hormone wasn't expensive. It was like $1 an IU. So
wow, that's really cheap. Yeah, Dorian, can you shut that outside light behind you off? I think that's what's screwing up the camera a little bit.
All right, well I'll be back to the shadow then.
Yeah, go come out of the shadows. Yeah, another while you're doing that, a lot of people, and you know, I'm not going to mention names of anything, but guys thought that, you know, at that time in the 90s, that's when IGF-1 first came out.
Yeah.
And I always heard the whisperings that Dorian had the connection to the IGF-1. That's why he's so big. Were you using any IGF-1?
Tried it, didn't do a fucking thing.
Really?
Didn't do a thing.
Interesting. What about insulin?
I didn't notice anything. I don't know if it wasn't real or whatever, but I didn't notice anything. And then we come to the last chapter, which is, of course, the insulin.
Yeah.
You know, Dorian was the first one to use insulin and this and that. No, he wasn't. I learned about insulin from Milos Sarcev because Milos Sarcev put together some kind of protocol for NASA, and then he fell out with NASA.
Yeah.
And he told me this is how NASA made his rapid gains. You know, I think it was like 95. It just was a lot bigger than before.
Yeah.
So I used insulin in the off season in '96. I used insulin off season in '97. And this is my honest opinion about insulin. It did nothing good for my physique. It was only negatives.
Really?
I had all the muscle mass. Growth hormone was great, worked great.
Yeah.
Got more muscle, got leaner. I got past a plateau where I was in the off season, like around 280 before I used GH. And I couldn't seem to get past that. Eventually with GH, I got up to 300, over 300 pounds. So yeah, that's a big difference. With insulin, I got a bit heavier, but I got bloated. My stomach started to definitely get extended. My belly button even started pushing out from insulin use. So what causes that? I don't really know, because when I stopped and I stopped competing and I lost a lot of weight, it all kind of went back to normal. Yeah. Plus I had very extensive scans to measure all the internal organs to see if there was any growth, because people used to say, oh, maybe nothing. Maybe it causes a lot of water retention. Yeah. Or it causes an increase in visceral fat development. And maybe that's accounting for the big bellies and so on. But it seems to me, like looking at the guys today, that somehow muscles that are not affected by anabolics are growing with IGF, with insulin and peptides and all the things that people are using now.
Yeah, I don't know. It's all debatable, because, you know, I when I lost my weight and went back to a normal human being, my stomach went right down too. So I don't know what it was. It could just be, you know, the organs are muscular too. So sometimes the organs could get more muscular, I guess, and maybe that, who knows? But that will atrophy.
If that was the case, I would, you know, it's not hypertrophy from resistance. So if they're just growing, you would assume that they would stay like that. But I mean, I had all my battery of tests done, like pretty much when I decided not to compete anymore. So I was still like 280, 290, and they scanned all the organs, and they said, you know, apart from some thickening to the heart, which is anyway a result of athletic training and probably furthermore enhanced by using anabolics, and that was not a concern as long as the function is fine. So there was nothing there. So I don't know. It seems to be something temporary.
Yeah. Dorian, I want to switch gears one more time with, I mean, you are known as Mr. Blood and Guts. I mean, I read the book. I saw the video 400 times. I mean, you pretty much put the heavy-duty, high-intensity training on the map. Even though Menser did it before that, and Arthur Jones before that, and Casey Vieta, you put it on the map, really. And you actually probably made a lot of money for Mike Menser back in the day, because you popularized that. How did you meet Mike Menser, and how did he get you to try this concept, and what really made you resonate with this training system?
Well, I mean, I did a lot of reading. I'm very analytical, so even before I started training, I read a lot on nutrition and training, and I had pretty much every magazine that's been published from early 80s until when I retired. So I was always absorbing information and then seeing how it worked out in practice. And I noticed if I did more, as in more days in the gym or more volume, I just stopped progressing. And when I took a few days off, came back to the gym, I was bigger and stronger. So I was like, wow, seems that almost to a degree, the less I do, the more responsive I'm getting. So it made sense to me logically. It was logic, it was scientific, and then it worked in a real practical situation. So it could have been logical and scientific and appealing to me, but if it didn't work, I wouldn't care.
Right.
But it worked. So I was training like that all the way. And then I met Mensa in, I think, '92. And, this guy was a hero of mine for, his physique, his philosophy,
Sure.
the fact that he seemed to be an individual that was not, kind of not controlled.
he was unique, right?
Yeah, he was a unique guy. And so we talked and we trained together. And he said, at that time, I think I was doing a few warm-up sets and then basically like 2 sets to failure. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, I don't try and cut it back to just 1 set. And, the bigger and stronger you get, the more stress you're putting on your body while you're going to failure. So if you cut the volume back even more, you might get another growth spurt. But keep in mind, I was already Mr. Olympia at that point. Yeah. So I made a slight change, but, it wasn't really a big deal. I think, Mike obviously made a lot of it, but Mike was never my coach. He was somebody that I respected and looked up to when I got into the game, and I was happy to meet him and do some training with him, and he made some good points, but it was not my coach. Sure. We never had one discussion about nutrition or one discussion about anabolics. It was all about training.
Right.
And, I enjoyed. We had some good training together in Gold's gym, and I'm sure it was great for his personal training business, which I didn't mind because, this guy's writings and his presence and everything, I felt had a big influence on me and was helpful for me. So I didn't mind that he was getting something back out of the relationship.
Sure. I pretty much followed the philosophy as well. I found that less I did, more intensity, heavier weights, I grew better. And if I took more rest, I recovered better. I think most of us as bodybuilders probably overtrain because of the theory that more is better. When you see someone like getting back to Milos and his insulin protocols and he does these crazy giant set, workouts, do you think that, how do you feel volume training versus, higher intensity training? And the high intensity doesn't have to be to the extreme that Mensa took, but just less sets, higher intensity, more focus on less volume.
I think this volume training, you're just like pumping a lot of blood through the muscle. Mm-hmm. Personally, I mean, if I did that kind of training, I wouldn't have been Mr. Olympia. I would have had a good physique, but I wouldn't be able to take it to that level of muscle mass.
Do you think that
who's the 2 biggest, most muscular motherfucking Mr. Olympias ever? Dorian Yates and Ronnie Coleman.
Right.
What do they have in common? They fucking lift some heavy weights.
Yeah.
They train masses off. Yeah. And that gives you a certain look of power and density that you can't get with lighter training. Right. For instance, I used to compete against Paul Dillette and Flex Wheeler. I mean, these guys had big muscle bellies, round, big, full muscle bellies. But standing next to me, somehow they look soft.
Right.
Because they didn't have the density. You get that density of muscle by lifting heavy weights. You can get large volume muscle by pumping a lot of blood through there all the time and retaining a lot of liquid in the muscle or whatever. But it's a totally different look, and you can see someone's physique, and you can look at them, and you can see if that guy trains heavy or not. So there's a totally different look there. And if you want to look like Milos, train like Milos, probably.
Let me ask you about your training video, Blood and Guts, because it was the first video that had been put out where there was no editing involved. It was basically just you training, and it was probably, dare I say, maybe the #1 selling, bodybuilding video of all time. Why do you think people loved it?
It probably is the best-selling video of all time, and I get people all the time still saying, I fucking play that before I go to the gym. I wore the tape out. I wore the DVD out. My wife wants to divorce me because that fucking guy showering all the time is training with you, But I did it like that because I was very disappointed in all the ones I watched as a fan. Mm-hmm. I want to see fucking people killing themselves in the gym. I want to see this shit. And I couldn't see it. It was all posed and it wasn't real. Right. But I realized why that was. It was like that because the production company were running the show. Mm-hmm. And they wanted to do it from their point of view. That it looked nice. Correct angles, correct lighting, all this stuff from a production point of view, which means you're going to lose the genuine workout and the energy and behind the workout. So it was Kevin Horton who took the black and white pictures that filmed the DVD. I said, look, I want you to, let's hire a film camera. I want you to come in the gym and I want you to film my workouts as best as you can.
Right.
And I want you to get the weights in there so people can see the weights that I'm using.
Sure.
Apart from that, I don't want to fucking know you're there. Don't talk to me. Don't put any lights up. Don't get in my way. Because if you do that, it's not going to be the genuine deal, right? So I just wanted to be a fly on the wall and film the workout. So that's what we did. And then, you know, we were thinking of putting some editing on there and some explanations and this and that. But I thought, well, it's self-explanatory.
Right.
You just watch it. I don't need to tell you, like, you know, control the negative, move the weights with control and strict form all the time. Don't swing them. Don't. Just look. You can see all that anyway. So, and then we were watching it and I was like, something's wrong with this, man. It's like, I don't know. It's too bright. Hey, can you turn the color off? Let's watch it in black and white. So turn the color off, and I'm like, fuck yes, that's it. That reminds me of Raging Bull that had Robert De Niro in there, boxing movie, where, you know, it just seemed that much more genuine and grainy because the black and whiteness of the film. So I was a bit inspired by that movie, and when I saw myself training in black and white, I was like, this is a shit people need to see. So yeah, that's the story behind that, really.
How many copies did you sell of it?
I don't even know, Dave. I mean, we sold a lot of VHSs back in the day, and then it went to DVDs. So it's so long since, you know, I'm not really selling it now. But I don't know, man. I'd have to ask Steve. He sold a ton of stuff.
Steve, I remember at Bev's gym, I would go in there and there'd be like 100 copies packed in little mailer envelopes out because I guess Steve was fulfilling all your sales for you.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it. Every day they were like that. Every day for years.
Yeah. It's got to be. I mean, you know, like you said, there's no social media. There's no videos on the internet. There's no internet. There's nothing. There's no way to see it, anything apart from buying a magazine or buying a video. And the videos that came out training were all like foo-foo staged bullshit stuff that nobody was getting inspired by.
No.
So I wanted to inspire people. I wanted to, like, people to watch this and get a fucking rocket up their ass and say, like, shit, I'm going to go to the gym and train. And that's exactly what I achieved, according to like thousands of people that have thanked me for making it. So it's all good. And we're gonna have to wrap it up, Dave, because my missus says my dinner's ready, and what we can.
We're gonna stop here, and we're gonna continue this next week, I think, Dorian, because I got a lot more to ask you, and I know you were kind enough to take time out of your schedule, and hopefully we can schedule something next week, because this is epic stuff that I think a lot of people don't know. What went on behind the scenes during your reign, and I think this is super informative. And I want to thank you for taking time out and enjoy. You actually did turn into the shadow by the time that the sun went down there in the south of Spain. So you really lived up to your moniker today.
There you go, man. And I'm not even controlling the lights, you know.
That's right. It's just it's the universe showing us who you really are.
The shadow. So there's the shadow, and the shadow will be back.
That's right. All right, Dorian. We'll stop here and we'll continue. Next, we're going to talk about life after bodybuilding with you for the next
whatever you want,
installment.
Man. Whatever you want, we'll talk about it.
All right, 6-time Mr. Olympia, Dorian Yates from the south of Spain in his own house there. And guys, stay tuned for the next installment. I guess it would be considered part 3 coming up next week. I'm Dave Palumbo with another installment of Live With. We'll see you next time.